Hello, my name is Ava Moschette, and today I'll be presenting my research on the impact of peer leadership in a student run newsroom for the 2026 University Undergraduate Research and Arts Forum. My research explores how leadership works when students are leading other students and what that means for things like learning, collaboration, and newsroom success. I'd also like to quickly thank my faculty advisor, Bob Gould from the School of Journalism, for his guidance with this work. First, to introduce myself a little bit, I'm currently a senior at Michigan State. I'll be graduating in the spring of 2026 with a bachelor's degree in journalism and a minor in broadcast journalism. I've dreamt of becoming a news reporter since I was in the fifth grade, so this industry is really valuable to me, and I'm excited to share my research with you. Now we can get started. In professional newsrooms, there's usually a clear hierarchy, with seniority taking roles in things like management, directing, producing, and editing. But in newsrooms that are entirely student run, that structure is often replaced with peer leadership, where students are managing and guiding each other. This matters because these environments are where many journalists are first trained and really get to decide if this is the industry for them. So, understanding how peer leadership works in a student run newsroom environment can tell us a lot about how students build their skills, collaborate under pressure, and prepare for real world careers in media. My main research question was, how does peer leadership in a student run newsroom impact productivity, collaboration, and skill development? I also looked at a couple of sub questions, including how peer leadership affects confidence and communication, and also what challenges come up when there isn't a strong top down authority structure. Before we get into my methods and results, to give some context, a student run newsroom is a space where students are responsible for producing content. And this includes everything from reporting to editing to putting on the final production or the news broadcast. Peer leadership in this case means that students are guiding and supervising others who are essentially at the same level as them. Our environment for this research is Focal Point News, a student run weekly news broadcast powered by the Michigan State University School of Journalism. Now, here's a short look into the Focal Point News newsroom.
Welcome to Focal Point News, your source for campus news, breaking headlines, and in-depth stories that matter. Coming up on Focal Point.
Hello and welcome to Focal Point News. I'm Gabriel Klein.
And I'm Michaela Mazza. Thanks for tuning in. It's October 24th, 2025.
Today is November 7th, 2025, and we have a very special show for you here today.
It's October 3rd, 2025, and with this new month comes updates from the federal level.
This week has definitely been a busy one for Michigan State athletics, both across campus and on the road.
Cleveland hovering around the 49 area, Green Bay all the way at 33, and a brisk 42 over in Columbus.
And that's all we've got for you this week at Focal Point News.
As always, thanks for tuning in.
Okay, so now that you've seen just a small glimpse of what the Focal Point News broadcast looks like, we can move on to our methods. For this study, my role was the executive producer. So I was the peer leader along with one other student, and together we were the co executive producers. We went along the fall semester from August to December of 2025, doing our weekly newscasts, and then at the end of the semester, I sent out a survey for all 15 students in the class to complete. A note about this that's worth mentioning is that none of my questions on my survey were required for anyone to answer. That means not every question received the maximum amount of 15 responses. So I sent out this survey, which included scale questions to measure students' perceptions of things like collaboration, communication, and confidence. And the survey also included open-ended responses, which, as you'll see when we get to our survey results, really help us understand the student perspective in better detail. I then analyzed responses to identify common themes, and this approach allowed me to focus not just on outcomes, but also on those personal experiences and perceptions within the newsroom. Before we get into my findings, I just want to share a couple of pictures to show you what peer leadership looked like in this case. In this student newsroom, peer leadership showed up in a few key ways. Executive producers guided reporters through things like story ideas, research and development, and putting on the broadcast itself. They often offered feedback on scripts and finished news stories too. But there was also a strong emphasis on collaboration. Decisions about content and direction were often made as a group. Feedback was peer to peer rather than coming from a single authority figure. And overall, responsibility was shared, which really created a team oriented environment. Included here are some pictures of me in my role as the executive producer. On the left, that's me giving some advice to our anchors before one of our broadcasts. And on the right, I'm taking a picture of a reporter as she was doing a live shot for one of our shows because I was so proud of her. So, after spending the semester serving in this leadership role, I created a survey for all the students to fill out, like I said, and now is where we get to the findings. Okay, so one of the strongest findings was that peer leadership had an overwhelmingly positive impact across multiple areas. For example, 86% of respondents strongly agreed that peer leaders create a more collaborative learning environment. 86% also strongly agreed that peer leadership increases confidence in completing assignments. 71% strongly agreed that peer leadership improves communication within student teams. And a whopping 100% of respondents said peer leaders made them feel more confident in a newsroom environment. Overall, this data shows that peer leadership significantly strengthens things like collaboration, confidence, and communication in student newsrooms. And this is reflected not just in the data, but in those short answer questions I mentioned earlier. For example, when asked to evaluate their experience under peer leadership in Focal Point News, one participant said, quote, I felt I grew more as a person and as a professional in this class more than most. This class has instilled a confidence in myself to dive right into the broadcast field. Another participant said, quote, peer leadership definitely helped make it feel like a real newsroom. So, while our findings were overwhelmingly positive, a few minor challenges were still clear. That's where our challenges come in. The biggest discrepancy I found in my survey results fell under the topic of feedback. So, one question on the survey asked respondents to evaluate feedback from peer leaders compared to the traditional instructor led feedback, like you would typically have in the classroom. The results are skewed towards the positive end, as you can see by the chart on your screen, but this is pretty much the extent of my data that suggests something is lacking within the peer leadership model. There's also a short answer response to support this finding. When asked, in what ways did having peer leaders create challenges? One participant wrote, quote, I found it hard to get feedback from the peer leaders at times. It felt weird to be graded, in a sense, by someone the same age as me. The rest of the short answers I received for this same question said things like NA or non applicable, quote, I really didn't experience many challenges, none, or quote, I felt the peer leaders created no challenges for me personally, other than challenging me to become a better news producer. So I like that one. Overall, challenges were mentioned far less frequently than the benefits, suggesting that while peer leadership is not perfect, it is largely effective. There are a few key limitations to my study. The sample size was small, and I only focused on a single newsroom. The time frame was also limited, so this data may not capture the long-term effects, which is a valuable perspective. In addition to this, survey responses were self reported, which may introduce bias. Remember that during my time collecting this research, yes, I was serving as executive producer of Focal Point News, but I was also these students' classmate and friend. I encouraged them to be as honest as possible in the survey and collected only anonymous responses to make them feel more comfortable. Because of all this, my findings may not apply to all student media environments, but this small start might open doors and introduce more questions about student leadership in newsroom environments. So, after analyzing my research, my conclusion is this: peer leadership plays a significantly positive role in student run newsrooms. It helps build collaboration, confidence, and real world skills. At the same time, though, student run newsrooms require structure to address challenges like receiving feedback. Overall, from what I see, peer leadership is a valuable model, but it's one that works best when it's intentionally supported. That means continuing to have a professor or an industry professional involved in student run newsrooms has significant importance. But overall, peer leadership strategies I discussed in my research have a lot of benefits too. Thank you so much for listening, and I look forward to reading and answering all of your questions.